Welcome to our first podcast, Breaking into Commercial Real Estate for Residential Agents, where we dive into commercial real estate and business sales with the people who are in the trenches every day. I'm your host, John Shamoun, broker, appraiser, and deal maker. Today's episode is an introduction to commercial real estate for residential agents. Whether you're a seasoned agent or just curious about commercial real estate, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. I'm so excited for today's guests. Between the two of them, they have over 50 years of experience, bringing real insights into how this business really works behind the scenes. Today's guest is Gina Uzunian, CCIM. Joining us today is Sue Horowitz. Welcome, Gina. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Gina, will you please tell us more about yourself and what you do, and then, you as well, Sue?
Sure. I'm a residential practitioner. I started as a residential agent, and then after almost 10 years of residential practice, started selling 1 to 4 units. I like dealing with that aspect, the income and the tenants actually, and the investment side. I did have some property management background in the past, so that was really easy to pivot also to
Sure.
that side. So I enjoyed selling 1 to 4 units, and then at some point I opened my own brokerage with my business partner, and actually it was his idea for us to maybe start to phase ourselves out of residential and go into more multi-residential and eventually commercial. And I think it was one of the best decisions we made because it made a world of difference for my firm as a small brokerage.
Yep.
Once we started the shift, I really loved it because of the opportunities it presented to me. And then, of course,
More clients, obviously.
more clients,
yes.
more income, being able to serve multiple clients, basically have a full service brokerage. And then the rest is basically history. Then we started advancing into selling larger apartment buildings, then more into development,
Yes.
land development, commercial, industrial. And then, of course, that also prompted me to get my CCIM designation because I knew at that point that this is something that I'm going to continue with.
Absolutely.
And my career is going to go to that route where I'm going to do more commercial.
Welcome, Gina. Welcome.
Thank you.
For being on our first podcast. So, thank you
for having me.
Yes. Sue.
My name is Sue Horowitz. At this point in time, I have my own brokerage. It's SH Commercial Real Estate, Special Use Properties. But I started many years ago actually as a professional educator and did that for many years, 20 plus years at all levels. At some point when my children were young, I wanted to have more time with them. And then I also they were going to a private school. I became involved with their school on the board. Had always been very interested in real estate. Their school was looking for a new location. So I became involved with that. At that point, I had my real estate license. I had or was very close to getting my real estate license. And I realized that I knew on the inside what schools needed and taught myself there really were no commercial agents, maybe 1 or 2, who were working in that field of commercial real estate at the time.
Specialization, right? I mean, talk about specialization, right? Because that's a really very, very focused lane.
SH Commercial Real Estate, Specialized Properties, Special Use Properties, that it calls. But anyway, I got involved in that. At that point, really taught myself about the different types of regulations, both governmental, licensing, zoning, and became very involved in that aspect of commercial real estate. It led me into also working with industrial, office, and retail properties. Okay. Long before it became very popular to do adaptive reuse, it was how could we utilize these buildings
Repurpose them. Absolutely.
repurpose them. One of the reasons was at that time it was very difficult to get a loan on actual, say, church properties or specialized properties. Anything that had a religious symbol was shied away from by the lenders, which is no longer the case. But it gave me an introduction both into retail, office, and to some extent industrial, learning a lot about entitlements and zoning and working with the city. It's developed into a wonderful niche in the business, evolved into working with religious facilities as well as senior facilities, both residential and day programs. It may sound very disparate, but my introduction to that was at that time there were a lot of religious schools, in particular Catholic and Lutheran, that were very large on church campuses that had their own schools and often provided housing for their clergy, both active and retired. So that's kind of how that circle evolved. And that's where I am today.
Thank you, Sue and Gina. And you mentioned something very interesting. And this is something that we're going through in commercial real estate. And we go through commercial real estate over time. It takes decades sometime. And this is specifically when you talked about repurposing. And I just want to raise this point real quickly for everybody that's listening to understand that, buildings are built for a specific user and they're housed for a specific use. And then over time, that use and that user changes. And so when you mentioned about the repurposing of different buildings, whether it was retail, industrial, office, we're seeing that transition now in commercial real estate. A classic example of what's unfolding before our eyes today is the office buildings. And they're repurposing office buildings into residential units. And there's great examples of that in San Francisco, on the East Coast, in Boston, in New York. So this is really unfolding, this repurposing.
I mean, it's being, encouraged by the federal level and the state and local level in order to provide more housing. And I think that's one of the solutions to having housing.
Yes.
So repurposing these other types of properties into residential use. And of course, there's a process they go through, but
Absolutely.
I think that's something that's going to help us resolve with our housing shortages.
So this would be a great segue to talk about our conversation today, right? It's so the differences between commercial and residential practitioners or agents. So in your perspective, Gina, and you as well, Sue, we can just have a conversation about these differences between the two.
Okay.
Where do you see that?
Well, for residential agents, basically they're dealing with buyers and sellers. And these buyers and sellers are purchasing or selling properties that either is for their personal use. So they have, and these properties have, certain things that it's got to meet. Whether it's the location, whether it's the property size, or school districts, what have you. Where so
They're essentially using the actual,
the properties. So their
residential.
needs are different. Whereas on a residential income and commercial property, investment property, these properties are mainly purchased for income generating purposes or
That's right.
business use purposes for like owner user. And there are different types of properties. So for example, in residential, we're dealing with houses, condominium condos, and 1 to 4 units.
Yep.
Whereas
And those could be investment vehicles as well, right?
exactly.
But on a smaller scale.
On the smaller scale. But as far as the commercial, then we're dealing with, office, retail, industrial, land,
Specialty use. Yes.
So, and these properties again are purchased mainly based on the income it's going to generate, or if it's going to be owner user type of
Absolutely.
situation. So they're vastly different on what the purpose and use is.
Yes.
And I think also the outlook or the perspective of the people who are buying it. Residential buyers tend to be more on the emotional side,
Yep.
okay?
Exactly.
Whereas commercial tend to be more on the practical, the money, the financial side of things, okay? Who's going to be my tenant here if I'm not going to be just an owner user, or even if I'm going to be a partial owner user? How easy will it be to lease the rest of the property? Who's going to come in? What sort of income will it bring?
The risks are greater, obviously,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the investor coming in.
And then just add to that the residential, whether it is a house or a condo or even an apartment or a manufactured home, whether it's a middle cost luxury, it's the same type of property. So it's more uniform, whereas commercial tends to be very segmented, and the practitioners typically specialize if not totally, then primarily in one type of property, whether it be office, retail, industrial.
I think you're spot on there. And the way that I look at it is the main differences between the two is, and there are a lot of similarities, and let's talk about similarities really quickly. So essentially, a residential agent typically will work with buyers and sellers, tenants and landlords.
Exactly.
And if you look at the commercial practitioner, they pretty much have the same buckets of, buyer, seller, landlord, tenant. But there are huge differences when you start looking at the different food groups that they work in.
Exactly.
Right, so residential real estate, typically you're not looking at the investment value or the income value of that particular property. Typically they're purchased for an owner-user. They're going to live and raise their families in those homes. Where investment properties is vastly different. Now you're really looking at the numbers, if the numbers make sense.
Exactly.
And we can get into the differences more,
Well, the financing is different.
Yes.
Evaluations are different, so we could perhaps discuss some of the financing.
Of course. We can look at financing, obviously. I think one of the other things I wanted to talk about this morning was, how are these different when it comes to helping your career grow when it comes to commercial real estate? There are very specific, education that may be required. And we're going to talk about the different myths that may be associated with some of these things. But, when it comes to learning about commercial real estate and your career and income, how is it different from a commercial practitioner to a residential practitioner?
Well, for me, like I said, it opened me up to an avenue of ongoing investors that I could help with their buying, selling, leasing needs. Whereas previously, if we had a buyer that bought or a seller that sold a property with us and moved out of state, basically that relationship is done. The seller relationship most of the time is done if they're out of the area. Of course, not every situation is different, but as far as my growth was with regards to investors, because then it exposed me to people that had multiple properties. Some clients have apartments and offices and commercial space, and I was able to basically to service their needs and get repeat business and referral business, and that just opened the doors to a whole
more
new
clients
world.
for sure,
more
right?
Clients,
Obviously,
more income,
yes.
And obviously, with regards to dealing with investors and commercial properties, you've got to keep the client happy and do your very best, because then they're going to come back, because you have repeat business coming from the same group of people over and over again.
Yes. Very good.
And I think people are going to decide whether they want to focus more on a residential or on a commercial, oftentimes based on their personality and what they're comfortable with and the relationship they like to have with people and going out, even if that particular family may not buy multiple homes in which they're going to live. They may buy a second family home
Sure.
or not.
Yes.
Whereas the relationship with the commercial agent is much more just a business, a number, transaction, what makes sense.
What about money? What about commissions? I can imagine,
I think
right?
that the commissions really, may or may not differ. We may get to that yet, but we've talked about, commercial deals come in all sizes.
Mhm.
You know, you have your large corporations, but you also have your individuals who have an individual office or a retail owner user, or they're an They will have residential clients who may have commercial requirements and come to them. And then they can decide, okay, this is something that I'm interested in learning about, either becoming a commercial practitioner or partnering with someone who is a commercial practitioner on certain transactions, or just to know what the different options are, meeting people in the commercial field to whom they can refer the business and also earn sometimes quite handsome referral fees and additional income in that manner.
This actually leads me to some questions about like some of the myths out there, like, about referring to other agents and the such. So I think it would be kind of interesting to talk about some of that. Let's demystify, or maybe the perceptions out there about commercial real estate, at least from the perspective of the residential agent.
Okay, well, I think a lot of residential agents sometimes think that there's an additional license you may need, which is not true, because in California, we have a salesperson and broker license, and those licenses, with those licenses, you're able to conduct residential or commercial real estate.
Yes.
Or business.
Or business.
Yeah. And so that's the first thing. We use the same license. And as far as some people think, well, you've got to have a business degree or financial degree in order to be able to sell commercial real estate. That's also not true. I mean, I think that those are the two things that most people don't realize, that they already have the ability to transition into or become a residential agent, because
They just like the experience.
Yeah,
maybe.
they need to get the experience on the job training and
of course their office
mentorship.
Their offices may not
Yeah.
allow for the practice of commercial real estate or these
Exactly.
opportunities, and it would be important to speak to your broker manager to find out more about their practices and what they're allowed,
Sure.
the do's and don'ts. I think
Not
that's
only that, I
important.
mean, definitely before selling or leasing commercial property, it's best to talk to your broker manager to get their okay, and also make sure you have adequate errors and omissions coverage for that practice as well. But as far as the going back, I mean, it could be easy to transition if that's what you want to do.
Of course.
To
Yes.
Sue,
what about
with
you?
your
I mean,
career.
yes, with your career. I mean, obviously, there are some other perceptions out there by residential agents that may be looking at, different property types. I mean, they probably think that, all commercial agents are equal. Are they?
Well, now equal in what respect?
Well, they're all the same. They're all
But
the
I think
same. For
they're
example.
definitely not all the same,
No.
because of the great segmentation in commercial real estate that we don't find in residential real estate. So if you're going to work with a commercial agent, or if you're seeking commercial property, depending on what the property is, what the use is, even geography to some extent, although possibly not as greatly as residential, you're going to want to seek an agent who has that knowledge and experience and understanding about the type of real estate you're seeking.
That's spot on, because there are so many specialties, there are so many different lanes that you can get into. And I think it's important to recognize that it takes time to build that trust as an advisor for that specific asset type, whether it's industrial, office, retail. And keep in mind that within those particular categories, there are subcategories that we can go into.
exactly.
Absolutely.
We're not going to peel back all the layers today, but this is basically introduction. Hopefully, we can have more conversations about the different property types and subtypes and how the metrics work when we're doing evaluation or maybe an opinion of value.
And that being said, I think it's important to understand that it's very common for commercial real estate agents to refer amongst themselves. If it's an area with which I am not familiar, then I'm going to seek somebody in another segment, in that segment of commercial real estate, who can handle the deal. And like the residential agent, I may be a cooperating broker, or I may just take a referral fee.
I think that is spot on again, because think of it as adding another layer to your services, what you offer. Just because you don't practice in specialized properties, but you know Sue Horowitz does.
Exactly.
Guess what? You could refer it out, and Sue may close the deal. And when she does, she's going to give you, a percentage of some commission, which is going to help you build your income as well. So, be mindful of that.
Definitely, this opens up to a big opportunity, because there's, especially if you're able to attract a client through networking and through other efforts, and you're able to capture, whether if you're going to do, you're going to handle the transaction yourself or refer it out. Definitely, it just opens up an opportunity to earn more income and sustain yourself in today's marketplace, because as we all know, market's a little bit tough right now. But if you're able to, get income from here and get income from here, whether you're selling or even doing commercial leases, that's another avenue that we didn't discuss. And I
leases,
think
appraisals,
the appraisal, yeah, exactly. So you're able to serve your client, but also you're helping yourself by earning more income.
I think another perception is with the residential agent thinking, especially the successful residential agents that do close 30, 40, 50 deals a year, that they could possibly do that on the commercial side. I will tell you that is not the case. So my bandwidth, at least on the listing side, is roughly around 10 listings on the business opportunity side of things. That's just my comfort zone, but I am going at full speed. So the perception of thinking that you can come in and do 30, 40, 50 deals is not necessarily true. An example of some quick data points, the San Fernando Valley, when it came to single family and condos and townhomes, the total amount of sales for 2024, year end 2024, were roughly around 8,800 closed sales. The entire LA County on the commercial side of things, and this is the main food groups of industrial, office, retail, and multifamily, the total number of sales for last year to date, 2024, were 3,500 for the entire county. So it is totally different when it comes to commercial real estate sales, residential sales. So please be mindful of that.
And I know we're coming to an end, but quickly to add to that, it's also the time frame that it takes. Commercial deals may happen quickly, but there are those commercial deals that take a year and as much as up to 2 years or more to complete the transaction.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Gina. This was amazing. And I look forward to more conversations with you guys. Absolutely. Okay, so that's a wrap for today's episode. Huge thanks to Gina Uzunian and Sue Horowitz for sharing insights that you don't hear in most places. If you found value in today's conversation, make sure to subscribe or leave us a review and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Thank you.